Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors, and it's a pleasure to not only welcome you, but to introduce you to, if you've been with us for the first time, to a program brought to you by the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. Each program, we take a look at the issues, the ideas, and the initiatives at work in our state to help us grow our economy, to address the need for creativity and opportunity, but also encourage more jobs. With that, today's program is a very special one because we do look at an industry sector that is impacting our lives, our livelihood, and clearly helping us to grow our economy. That subject, that topic is bioscience, life sciences. And when you think of companies like IDEX, Jackson Lab, Abbott Laboratories, Puritan, medical devices or products, you're kind of getting an indication of both the impact of bioscience industries, but also the importance to our economy today, and as you will find in the future as well. So it is bioscience. And our guest today is Agnieszka Carpenter, who is Executive Director of the Bioscience Association of Maine. And I welcome you so much to the program today, Agnieszka.
Thank you so much, Dana. I'm very excited to be here today.
Well, it's our privilege because you're an executive director of an association and an effort that's been around for a considerable time, has gone through various stages of evolution, but today it is, to use the term, it's rocking. And I am pleased to be able to share what is going on in our state and your industry, but also the promise it brings to our future. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I think I remember you at the International Trade Center. Is that correct?
Yes, actually. Yeah, so I am not from Maine originally. I'm from Poland, but I moved to Maine in 2009. And you remember correctly, I started at the Maine International Trade Center. I was there for a little over a year. Then I left the state for a little bit to my husband's home state of Massachusetts. But when we had an opportunity to move back, we took it, and I've been with BioME ever since. So that was in 2015, which puts me at 7 years with Bioscience Association of Maine.
Yeah, and it's been an exciting 7 years, I'm sure, for you, but also for the promise it brings to our economy. So for those who may not know, other than me introducing some of the larger companies that's a part of life sciences or bioscience, what is bioscience?
Bioscience in general is the study of living organisms, and biotechnology is part of it. So when we talk about biotechnology, it's the technology that uses living organisms or biological systems to create or develop new products. But we like to talk about life sciences or bioscience because it is a broader term. And it encompasses things like medical devices or medical technology, computational biology, things like that, that are not necessarily working with living organisms directly. And so as the association used to be called the Biotechnology Association of Maine back in the 90s and early 2000s. And then at some point we changed the name to Bioscience Association of Maine, just to be a little more inclusive and to reflect that broader understanding.
Yeah, when you expressed it and defined it very well, it's living organisms that affect. And when you think of whether it's a strategic plan you're looking to that the state developed in 2019, or whether it's just following the development of business in our state today, the bio prefix, those three letters, you find commonplace, not only in technology and in science, but I see it in biomedicine, biopharma, biofuel, biomanufacturing. It seems to be ubiquitous to business today. And is that because of where we are as a country today and the opportunities that is presented when you look at the traditional, let's say, forest products, and use that term in terms of using a product in a different way. Kind of sort that, I didn't set that up very well, but I think you know where I'm going, is that bio is ever present in so many different types of industry sectors. It's a common term used today. And I suspect the value is in exactly what you just described, is taking living organisms and making it applicable to that industry in different ways.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're getting at. So I think a lot of the viewers have probably heard of bioeconomy. And
Yes.
we talk about bioeconomy a lot more than just biotechnology. And so if you think of bioscience or biotechnology, it's the type of field that's been developing very rapidly, but it's pretty new. I mean, it started in the 1980s. So if you think about it, that's a very, very new discipline. But at first, it was more of scientists at the benches doing experiments and figuring things out, discovering the genome and so on. But as the years went by, it turned out that biotechnology can be used to solve all sorts of world's problems, not only human and animal health, but also environmental issues, agriculture, so producing new food. Now there's a lot of talk about climate change and sustainability, and biotechnology is there to help solve these problems. And so there are a lot of different sectors and a lot of different fields that are now crossing over to biotechnology, and we think of that field in a very different terms, as a far more interdisciplinary field.
Yeah, and you recently came out with a fascinating report that really put the spotlight on the progress and the impact that in our economy that bioscience provides us today. Would you share the highlights of that report with our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have it here. It's called Life Sciences in Maine, State of the Industry, and we update this report every couple of years. And we really focus on labor market data in it to show the impact of life sciences industry on the Maine's economy. And I'm happy to announce that the job growth within the life sciences sector has been unprecedented, and over the past 5 years, the life sciences jobs have grown by 42%. And then if you look at the 10-year period, it's 48%. And it's important to stress that when you look at all other industries in Maine, that job growth in the last 5 years has only been at 1%. So, that's a huge difference. So right now we're looking at about 10,000 jobs, 10,000 employees employed in the life sciences sector in Maine, which still in the scale of the Maine's economy, it's just a couple percent. But when you look at the pace of growth, that's really impressive. So that's one thing. Another thing I wanted to mention is the salaries. So the life science jobs are highly paid jobs. The average salary for a life science professional is $108,000. And that includes, when you think of a scientist, maybe you think of a PhD scientist at Jackson Lab, but really the 10,000 jobs include a lot of manufacturing jobs that are lower skilled, oftentimes just requiring a high school diploma. So the average salary of $108,000 includes all of these professions, and that's a much higher salary than in other industries. So not only are the jobs growing here, but they also pay more and more over the years, and this trend is going to continue.
Yeah, how many? I mentioned the 4 very large, recognizable companies that you would put in the category of life sciences. But as I recall, having read your report, there was close to 500 various businesses that were part of life sciences. Is that a correct number? Am I close to what does exist today?
Yes, you definitely did your homework, Dana. So it's 485 as of 2021.
Yeah.
So close to 500, yes.
That's great. So tell me this. I know that you're aware of Focus Maine. Focus Maine has placed an emphasis on this issue of bio. I've got to believe you're very close to them, but I'm going to ask you to speak a bit about that relationship, because they have picked agriculture, aquaculture, biopharma, and they have put a lot of emphasis on this whole issue of bio that we're discussing today. Kim Hamilton was there. Dana O'Brien is there now. Dana was in at the national level in bio from the federal perspective, but share with us your relationship, because that one is privately driven and offers a lot of promise. And the fact that you may be collaborating, I suspect you are, also adds to the emphasis as well as a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, Focus Maine is our partner organization. We have done some projects for Focus Maine. We really like working with that organization. Our missions definitely align. And you mentioned the 4 industries that Focus Maine has taken as the areas for growth for Maine. And, just to allude to what I was saying earlier, biotechnology sort of spills into agriculture, aquaculture, environmental science. And so we're definitely looking at those synergies. And Dana, who I actually watched on your show, he's coming from bio, you mentioned that. And at bio, he was mostly focused not on the human health piece, but the agriculture. So it's really great to see him take over as the president, because he has that more holistic view and he really understands where biotechnology or bioscience can take us. I think Focus Maine is really looking at biomanufacturing as Maine as a potential place where the biomanufacturing facilities could have tremendous growth. They're talking to a lot of large manufacturers outside of Maine. And, I think what we're trying to do together is to tell the story of Maine as a place that's not only famous for tourism and great food and lobster, but a place where life sciences is happening. And a lot of people now look at Maine as that future biotech hub. We can see a lot of people believing in that vision, and we definitely, BioME and Focus Maine share that vision as well.
Yeah, very well said, both in terms of the promise it brings, but also the collaborative effort, because that really does matter in getting the job done. I'm reminded when you spoke of that, of the 4 themes that they're working on, but our strategic plan that was developed in 2019 really, in many ways, spoke of the bio concept alternatives, because there were 4 themes, as I recall them, classified as that were put forward as promising for our future. One was the food and marine, and the other was forest products, technical services, and the last one was the manufacturing community. And based upon what you've just said, that application of bio, you will find in every single one of those promising themes for our future.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we work with the development of community, with the Department of Development Community quite a lot. And so we're definitely familiar with the plan. We actually just had a big conference a couple of weeks ago, and we had Commissioner Johnson speak. And it's really great to see that our friends at the state level believe in our industry and are really paying attention and, promoting life sciences as one of those super impactful industries for the future. And also just to comment on some of the industries that you mentioned, I recently spoke with Renee Kelly from University of Maine, where they have the bioengineering department, and they do a lot of science with wood products and composites. And we talked about how Maine could potentially become sort of like a Silicon Valley for what Silicon Valley is for the California area, we could be that for the biotech hub of Boston, where we have all sorts of potential here with marine sciences being right here, since we're right on the ocean, and we have some great research going on. And then the wood and composites, there are so many different applications, even for human health. One of our board members had a wrist injury. She broke her wrist and she got a plate in her wrist. And so at UMaine, they're developing these types of plates, but made out of composites. So many synergies and so much potential in Maine.
Boy, I think that word potential does speak volumes of what you're doing, but also the evidence of the proof of what you're doing is just in the statistics you shared with us a moment ago. It offers a very promising picture. There's another statistic that was part of the strategic plan that I think speaks to your industry and those that are associated with the BioME effort, as I classify it. And that is that many of the jobs created in the next 10 years do not exist today. That's really not a discouraging comment. I find that to be very encouraging because it shows that the economy is moving in new ways. And what you're sharing with our viewers today is evidence of that. So I'd welcome your comment to that, either to agree or dispute it, but I just find that to be a positive statement, not a discouraging or negative one.
No, I think it's absolutely positive, and I think you're definitely correct with the jobs coming to Maine that don't necessarily exist yet. And even when you think of bioscience as a field and how it's been evolving and changing, it's incredible. I mean, even for something like criminology, there are so many cold cases that are now being solved because of genetics, and that's a biotechnology field. And you didn't used to have a person who studies ancestry results to find, to solve a crime, but now you do. And there will be more and more jobs like that, also in other fields. The other thing to note is that I think in the next 10, 20 years, bioscience will definitely rely heavily on data and computational science. And so those types of fields will create a ton of other jobs. You may be familiar with the Roux Institute that was formed in Portland. And I think the founders of that institute at Northeastern University, they really recognized where biotechnology is going in the next several years. So they sort of predicted it and decided that Maine needs to be ahead, and they're heavily focusing on AI and machine learning and those types of topics, but also working very closely with our community, understanding the needs here, the type of training that needs to happen. I've been very, very impressed with what they're doing here.
Yeah, it is indeed very impressive, and I think that is very forward thinking, just as you and your organization has been when it comes to life sciences, bioscience. I want to go back for a second because I meant to pick up on this and I just kind of spaced on it. I mean, you've spoken of today, there's 10,000 jobs in bioscience, and you recognized or made the comment that in the last 5 years, that has grown dramatically by 42% versus a 1% by most traditional industries. And so it'd be easy for people to say, well, I'll bet a lot of that was attributed to the pandemic, when in fact, yes, there were 1,600 jobs, but today you have 10,000 jobs. So while it was important and played a very vital role, it wasn't the whole picture that you're sharing with us today.
Yeah, so we've been tracking this data for quite some time, and In the past 10 years, the trend has definitely been upward, and it had nothing to do with the pandemic. But when we did the report back in 2019, that 5-year job growth was at around 15%. And so when the pandemic started and we saw what the main companies did, which is, responded to the crisis in a truly unprecedented way, coming up with new solutions, new products, really on a global scale. And when this was happening, we were really promoting that response in Maine. And it was very exciting to see what happened in the numbers. So we knew that the growth would have been really high, but we didn't really expect 42% over the past 5 years. But if I were to say, if the pandemic hadn't happened, what that growth would have been at, just looking at all sorts of different sub-industries such as medical devices or testing labs, not necessarily related to the COVID tests or test components, I think it would have still been at about 20%.
Yeah. That's still very impressive. It's with that kind of exciting discussion we've had in this past 25 minutes, I'm dying to ask you, what's next for Bioscience of Maine?
Yeah, well, I think if I were to play a little foreteller here, I would say that all of those positive trends we're seeing in the report will continue to go up. I think there will be more and more jobs. Those jobs will be paying more and more. We're also seeing a lot of remote workers moving into Maine, sort of as a byproduct of the pandemic, and either wanting to move their companies here. We've seen some newer, smaller companies, relocating to Maine because of the quality of life, but also just not wanting to be in an urban area. We're seeing also biotech professionals who move here to work for companies outside of Maine, but just to live here. And if you think of that, even though they're not paying maybe the state tax on income, but they still dine here and they purchase things. So they're putting money into the Maine's economy, and maybe eventually they will find jobs here as the industry grows and needs more and more people. So those are the most prominent thoughts I have on the growth of bioscience here. I also do think that there needs to be a little bit of an intentional investment into this field. So we try to really put some highlight and emphasis on bioscience as the industry for the future and the future jobs in Maine.
No, very well said, and it sets forth a very exciting future, and you're an exceptional salesperson. So keep up the good work. Agnieszka, it's before I close out, is there anything else you'd like to add? Like I said, you've been a wonderful guest and offering us a very promising future in Maine, and we all appreciate that. But final words are yours.
Sure. I guess I just wanted to also mention that when we talk about bioscience jobs, I just want to make sure that everybody understands it's not only scientists who are employed by the life sciences sector, but, these are, a lot of them are large companies, very well functioning. And so you don't need to be a scientist to have a bioscience job. So you could be an accountant, a manufacturing operator, or an attorney. And so the more companies we have here, the more workplaces we'll have. And I think that we should be looking at this sector from that lens. Bioscience has a very high economic multiplier, which means that every job created in the life sciences industry creates almost 2 jobs in all other industries. So, in a state that's pretty old and needs more and more and more jobs and new people, I think life sciences is definitely a sector to be paying attention to. And we're not trying to replace the heritage industries here in the state, but we're really trying to add a new chapter to the history and the story of Maine.
Very well said, and perfect closing to a great show from my point of view. I think, Agnieszka, you've been a great host as I host. I guess I'm the host, you're the guest for this program, and I can't wish you enough good luck, because your success will bring success to us. And so thanks for being on the show today, and I look forward to working with you in the future. It sounds exciting.
Thank you so much, Dana. I really appreciate being on the show.
My pleasure. Now, as we reflect on the program today in the takeaway portion, I think it's fair to say that, it seems like every day in one way or another, I'm reminded of the state's 10-year strategic plan that was adopted in 2019 and the significant role it plays. I mentioned this during the interview, but in the plan, among other things, there were 4 areas they called thematic areas that offered promise to the state of Maine. It addressed our current strengths. It was a growing global demand. It had the potential for job growth, job creation, and those areas, as we mentioned, were the food marine. They were the forest products, technical services, and manufacturing on the making community. And as you heard from our guests today, that the theme throughout all of those was a bio-based alternative. It was biotechnology, biomanufacturing, biofuel, biopharma, bioscience, as we've heard. It seems to be an alternative that's almost ubiquitous with just about all of our traditional industries, taking it to a new chapter, as was stated. But each and every one of them offer us the promise of a growing economy and that we're well on our way. Today's program offered evidence of that promise in so many different ways. 485 life science companies in Maine, representing 10,000 workers, $108,000 average job. In the last 5 years, even though the 1,600 during 20 and 21 as a result of the pandemic was impressive, the last 5 years, the growth has been 43%, making it the fastest job growth in all of New England. And as Agnieszka mentioned, that growth has every intentions of continuing. And yes, it certainly adds proof that to those words that we spoke of during the show, that many of the jobs created in the next 10 years don't exist today. And those that do, I believe, will be driven by technology, and in all likelihood, biotechnology. And when you hear the words expressed today, you realize that, and you think of the changes in the economy to accommodate where we are in the world stage, these words echo true. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Now those words probably apply to many different aspects of our life, but they clearly apply to what we have heard today. And in fact, those very words, as well as today's topic, really defines the need, the value, the importance of innovation in our economy, be it here in the state or on the global stage. It's new ways, new products, new ideas, new modifications, and all of that innovation means that that's the 50% of the growth in your GDP at any time. So when I reflect on what Agnieszka spoke of today, as she spoke of the bioscience as well as the bioindustries and the interrelationship and the impact that they have, boy, it's an encouraging time at a time or during a time of uncertainty. Promise at a time we can use hope. And it carries with it a recognition, appreciation that when tested, as during the pandemic, Maine people respond. And when the economy has challenges like we've seen and understand, the need for new opportunities exist, and we're there. And bioscience, our guest, and the story that she brings is proof of what I had to say. With that is the takeaway for today and Maine Takes program. With that, please remember these words: be kind to yourself, but also be kind to one another. This is fall, autumn in Maine, a beautiful time of year, well recognized, well appreciated by all of us. Please enjoy. Until next time.